So in terms of voting, men are minority by numbers that vote and numbers of registration. Well, what's left? Maybe, I don't know, we just don't spend money so we're not listened to? I don't think so. I'll go out on a fairly safe limb here and say women are most likely the biggest consumer market in America. Let's face it, we make thousands of purchasing decisions every month, from groceries to cars to houses. Women today are doing a lot of the consumer leadership in this country. So what gives? If all of those things are in our favor, what gives? Why is the number of female CEOs so pitifully small compared to men? Why is it when you look at the studies of salaries of women dominate the lower tier jobs and men fill the upper tier jobs? It just doesn't make sense. Well, it's true. As writer Rita Mae Brown once said, if the world were a logical place, it would be men who ride side saddle. If I need to explain that to you. Bottom line, though, if I hear that on the radio tomorrow, I'll know where it came from. Bottom line, though, I think several forces in our society continue to make things unfair to you as businesswomen competing for success in today's complex economy. The first is politics. This has to be said because no talk about how we're going to succeed in business world as women really matters unless we have the same success in the political world as well. To a great extent, our society takes its cue from politics. Unfortunately, in its heart and soul, the political system of this country remains anti-female. Let me stop and say I'm not about to slam one party or the other. What I'm saying applies to both. In fact, most of my first big political fights when I was in the General Assembly were essentially with the Democratic Party power structure. So I'm talking about a bipartisan problem here. I served in the North Carolina Senate before becoming Secretary of State. Let's be honest, the news media that covers politics has a much more comfortable role with male leaders than with female leaders. I don't say these things lightly, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to back that up. I used to be more hopeful about how the system would change, but I'm more right now than I ever was. Let's just go back to 2008. We had a major Republican and a major Democratic female candidate for president in the race. That was the first. These women were running popular campaigns with lots of support, raising serious amounts of money, and they were being covered by the media. One of them became the first female Republican nominee for vice president, Sarah Palin. The Democratic Party did that in 1984 with Geraldine Ferraro, and it's been a long time since people thought that was possible again. But at least 2008 gave us hope with Hillary Clinton's campaign. Finally, it seemed like women were becoming a regular part of the power game in this country. But I guess it all scared some elements of our society because fast forward to 2012, and wow, talk about women losing ground in the national news cycle. Now, I have to hear about contraception and birth control as a top presidential campaign issue. I have to see all male panels discussing the basic issue of women, whether they have an inherent right to control their own bodies. I have to watch the coverage where almost no women are present in the debate that should be essentially about ours to decide and to comment on. And then some poor college student speaks out about birth control and makes national news story. She's called a slut or a prostitute for talking about basic medical supplies that are a generation old. Come on, Loretta Lynn, 37 years ago, did a hit song called The Pill. I won't sing it for you. That song is older than the internet. It is older than the first IBM personal computer, which went on to be called a PC. It's older than the United States shuttle space program, which is now retired. Come on. That was taken care of a long time ago. According to the last census, that song is even older than the average mean age of citizens in the United States. But here we are, in 2012, seeing women discussed essentially by mostly male media as if we are one-dimensional lesser beings. 4 years ago or 10 years ago, I felt like women, we were moving in the right direction on becoming equal partners in the political system. And right now, today, I do not see much good news. I've been in politics for a while now, and there's something that I've learned. It all carries over. It all matters. I mean, if you are not viewed as equal in one sector of our culture, then that view spreads. You may not care about politics personally. You may not care that women are still portrayed in many TV shows and movies as little more than a romantic or sexual interest for the leading male character. Those things may not bother you personally, but inequality is like rust. If you let it stay and you don't rub it out in one area, it will spread to others. In my opinion, we're seeing some kind of effort to spread that equality to set us back in society right now. I think the standard of living you and I enjoy right now, right this minute, is increasingly under attack. This new birth control debate is part of that effort. It's essentially an issue coming from male power brokers. I'm sure it feels like another tired attempt to put women back in their place. I have some colleagues that believe barefoot and pregnant is the objective. After all, as businesswomen, I know you are spending far more of your time thinking about contracts than contraception. But then, and here's the women's issue for 2012, the same one that women faced a generation ago. We thought it had been put to rest, and yet it is now mainstream discussion. Even this old issue is locked in time to one gender. Apparently getting health care coverage for Viagra and Cialis is okay, no problems there. It would be funny if it wasn't so sinister. You would not want somebody who hated cake to run a bakery. You wouldn't want someone who never owned a pet to run an animal shelter. But you want to trust some out-of-touch men with birth control rules and policies. I say no thank you. It's also not funny because I think it's essentially a new effort to keep women from reaching real equality in society. March is Women's History Month. I used to give speeches for years. Every March I would say things like, along the lines of, look at how much progress we've made. And I would point out different examples. Then in the past couple of years I've given speeches in March along the line of, we need to get our progress towards equality back on track. And now from what I'm seeing, I am more and more worried about the future for women. I have been a small businesswoman. I have run my own storefront business operation. I partnered in a law firm. I've literally seen the days when I had to bring a man with me to a bank to get a business loan. Absolutely personal story. I had opened up my decorating studio. In decorating, you need a lot of samples. You don't need to keep a lot of inventory. And the business was becoming very successful, notwithstanding the fact that it was back when interest rates were 10 and 12% on housing loans. So when I got to close in somebody's garage and turn it into a family room, that was a big job for me. But I also got a lot more jobs than that in the commercial area as well as the residential area, and I needed a line of credit to get the material in to do what we needed to do. I was married at that time to someone who was not very financially savvy, and went to the bank, and because he was the one that went to Rotary with the bank person, I'd like to believe it was that, but I think it was just the bank policy. All the questions were asked of him, and I was like the potted plant on the side. And any question that came about the business, he had to refer to me. The banker would not talk to me directly. If you don't think I didn't go through a slow burn, you can forget it. And I knew our marriage was not very strong, and that if that loan was going to be paid, it was going to be up to me, because it was my business. I was the one that had the decorating skills. I was the one that had the business management skills. And yet, as a good wife in Eastern North Carolina, I just sat there and took it, because I wanted the loan. But it got paid. That marriage ended, you can guess where, and life got better after that in many, many ways. But here we are. When most people heard that I was going to run for Secretary of State, even after having a good record in the North Carolina Senate, it was 16 years ago. And the run was against NASCAR's own Richard Petty. How many of you remember that? And folks in the beginning did not give me a chance because Richard Petty was known by like 90% of the population of North Carolina, and little old me down here wasn't known by hardly anybody. But I worked very, very hard. We communicated that did you want a sports professional or a well-qualified professional woman, because I'd gotten my law degree by then and served in the Senate. And that message was heard and was elected. I love it when they call, she trounced him, 8% margin there, and things were good. But you know what? The story's not per se about that. The story is getting the nomination. Folks thought that Richard Petty was going to win. So therefore, in addition to the fact that the Democratic Party had never nominated a woman for a statewide race, therefore folks that said, let's nominate a woman this time because Petty's going to win anyway, and then we'll be through with this never nominating a woman thing. We showed them. Women all around this state who never met me said it's about time, by golly. And when they looked into it, they found I had a good record on professional qualifications, a good record on leadership at the General Assembly, a good record on integrity, and all the kinds of things that you would hope somebody you would be voting for had. And women all across the state, and men too, rolled up their sleeves and said, by golly, it's time. It's time we elected somebody other than somebody that had name recognition from somewhere else that really didn't transfer into the kind of things that we want for a major statewide office. So I'm very grateful, very, very grateful. But it was tough being the only one. The microscope is on you, let me tell you, the media. But the media was also watching how the governor and my fellow council of state members and the big dogs at the legislature, how they treated me. Sad to say, with the way Governor Perdue has been treated by some, they didn't learn very many lessons from that. But that's another story for another day. When the dust settled in the primary and I was the nominee, everybody thought I was toast, but we all know that's not the case. And the level of comfort with people voting for women has greatly increased since then. And you all in the Charlotte area have elected women to the mayor's position, to strong council positions, long before the rest of the state got in line. So congratulations to Charlotte and the women in Charlotte. But there were a lot of folks that said, okay, we've elected one, now we don't have to worry about it. You know how that goes sometimes. But aside from making history, it opened doors for lots of others. We made progress. We broke the glass ceiling in North Carolina politics, and women have run in a lot of places and been successful. And now on the Council of State, we are 60% female, and Democrat and Republican, bipartisan. I consider that a major step forward for North Carolina. The funny thing about glass ceilings, once you break them, nobody wants to own up to the fact that there ever was a barrier there in the first place. But anyway, let me give you another personal story from my time in practicing law. Another all-male profession at the time when I started back in a rural Harnett County. That's the place on the earth that holds Fayetteville and Raleigh together. I'm in between there.